Hello and welcome to the second part of this Take Control of Colour video tutorial. Now that we've taken a quick look at the ACR interface, we're actually going to start to make a few adjustments to our picture. So the first thing we want to do is just take a look at the basic enhancements, and the very first enhancement we want to do is obviously to sort out this slightly blue colour cast, and we can do that by using the white balance tool. But before we go in and start clicking around on the image, we're actually going to find an area of the picture that is neutral. So if we go up to our tools at the top of the screen, just click the Color Sampler tool, and then as we drag around the image and have a look over here on the right hand side, we'll see the values of the R, G and B, and what we're looking for are three values which are very similar. So just there I've got three values which are around the 140. If I drag down, I can actually see here we've got a very high blue value and the red and green are very similar, so we'll just click there to make a point. And basically what we're looking for is a neutral area of the image, or a neutral colour space of the image, that we can then click our white balance tool on. So I'll now select the white balance tool, and I can now just click on some of these areas and see the effect that that has on correcting the white balance. So our first point, although it's quite neutral in colour, it's got a slightly different colour cast in the sky to the foreground, and so that's actually made the sea a little bit more green. So I don't want to pick that as my white balance area. If I take a look over here on the left, my third one, I can really see that that has actually really quite neutralised the colour cast, maybe just a little bit too much. And finally I'm going to click down here just in the sea, and we can see that's a little bit less than 0.3, and that's kind of warmed up the picture a bit but neutralised the sea and also helps add a little bit more warmth to the sky. Now as you adjust the white balance, it's not an exact science, so you'll need to click around a few places. The Color Sampler tool can really help with that. It can really sort of show you exactly what the colour is within each of the areas. So instead of you clicking hundreds of times all around the image until you find the result that you want, the Color Sampler tool enables you just to mark a few points, check out how they look, and then select one to use as your final white balance. So now we've done that, our image is looking really quite nice and warm, and what we want to do is make adjustments to the temperature just to cool that down just a little bit and bring it back into sort of reality. So at the moment we've got a temperature of about 9,000, and what I'm going to do is just reduce that down, just add that chill back into the water, and as I do that you'll also see the histogram at the top actually starting to change its shape. So if I take that down to about a temperature of about 8,000, we see we've still got the warmth in the sky, we've still got the warmth on the rock, but we've actually just cooled down the temperature of the water a little bit, so it's looking a little bit more natural. Now below that we've got tint, and as I said before, this acts a little bit like hue adjustments. So at the moment I'm at +5. If I take that down to about -25, we start to see a slight green hue entering the picture, and again if I take that right up to the top I'll start to get this very vivid pinky purple. Now about +5 is where it was set after we did our white balance, and what I want to do is maybe just increase that just a touch to about +8. And what I've done there is just to add that little bit more red and warmth to the rocks, and again we've left the water alone by doing that, so it's still looking quite cool. Now that we've done that, we can see that we have a few clippings going on in the sky here, and the rocks in the foreground are just looking a little bit dark. If we take a look at our histogram, we can see all of the main bulk of our image information is over on the left hand side, and that is our shadows. So what we want to do now is just increase the exposure slightly, just to bring the histogram back into the central region. So I'm just going to increase the histogram. I've gone to about +40, and you can here really see that the histogram is now starting to fill the middle section of the graph. If I go a little further, you'll suddenly see the histogram flattens out, and it's just flattening out all of the tone and detail within the image. So really I just want to take that up to about +35, and that's just lightened up the image nicely, and we're starting to get a really nice look to the picture. Now that I've done that, I can see I've got clipping warning still in the sky. So what I'm going to do is just increase the recovery slider, which will help to just pull back a few of those burnt out highlights. We're not going to pull back all of them, but it'll just help to pull a few of those back. So as I increase the recovery slider, you'll start to see those highlights disappear. So I'm going to take that to about plus 30. And as I do that, if you take a look at the histogram again, the more I increase that, the more of an effect it will have on the histogram. And if you look at the picture, it suddenly starts to become flat if the recovery slider is moved too far to the right. So about to plus 30 seems to do quite nicely, and there I have an even balance of recovering my highlights and not making the image start to look too flat. Now I've done that, I want to take a look at my fill light and my blacks. So first of all, fill lights, as with recovery, that pulls back highlights. Fill light will actually draw back shadow detail. So if I take a look at the rocks in the foreground here, don't have a lot of information there. I don't want to push it too far because I'm not after that HDR look, but if I just increase that to about 10, we can really see the detail in those rocks is starting to appear. Take it up to about 20, that's just a little bit too far, so about plus 15 works really nicely for this image. Now below that is blacks, so that looks at just the very tip of the shadow area, and you'll see some of the cracks within the rocks here are really starting to darken up, increasing the contrast of the darker areas. Now I don't want to take that up too much, so about the standard plus 5 is absolutely fine. You might want to eke it up a little bit to about plus 7. Now brightness we can leave exactly where it is. And what we want to do is just to increase the contrast. So we're going to increase the overall contrast of the image just slightly and take that up to about plus 30. It's only about a 5 rise from the standard amount of plus 25. So now that we've done that, we've made our basic color adjustments, and you can see we've got really nice histogram compared with the original. And all we want to do really at this stage and for our basic tab is just to increase the saturation a little bit, the vibrance and the clarity. So first of all, the clarity has an effect very similar to the contrast, so we're just going to raise that up to about 30, and that just really sort of pulls in detail and sharpens up the edges and brings a lot more detail into the rocks and also the sea. If I just reduce that back down to about 0, and you can really see the effect that that has. Below that we have our vibrance, and vibrance and saturation can be used together. Always start off with vibrance and then move on to saturation. Now what vibrance does is it looks at all of the colours within the picture, and those with the least saturation it'll boost more than those with a higher saturation. And that basically just helps to avoid the colours from basically burning out. So we're going to increase the vibrance to plus 30, and again that just helps to add warmth to the rocks and also just adds that little bit of orangeness to the sky. Finally we're going to go to the saturation tab, and we've just increased that by plus 15, and that's just helped to increase the overall colour within the picture. So we've got some nice colours really coming through now. Okay, I'll leave you to get on and make those basic adjustments, and in the next part we'll take a look at how to use the tone curve.